Welcome to the show, Ashdin. Good to have you finally.
Thank you. Very excited.
We've spoken about a lot of these things during bunch of our meetings at Soho, and intermittent fasting is something common between our experiences, and I wanted to talk about that today. So let's start with your journey into IF. How did that come about? How long has it been? And you recently did a 5-hour fast, which a 5-day fast, which
5
I
days.
also want to get into.
120 hours.
That's crazy.
So intermittent fasting started about 9 years for me. So it's been a while. And it started with the way that typically people think about intermittent fasting, which is fat loss, right? I had, by that point of time, done everything under the planet, Atkins diet, high carb, low carb, this, that, everything. And nothing seemed to fit. Finally, one friend of mine from America sent me one article by this person called Dr. Sarah Solomon, who right now does not promote intermittent fasting, but that time she did. And I said, okay, let me try. What's the worst that can happen? And it said that start with 16 hours. So there was no gradually nothing. So we started 16 hours. And back then, 9 years ago, when you said the word fasting, people thought that, you're doing it for getting a good husband, getting a good wife.
Religious reasons mostly.
Religious reasons, right? And then I said, no, every day I do this for 16 hours. Ashdin, are you mad? You're going to faint on the middle of the road. Please don't drive, Ashdin? Like if you're driving then. And there were just so much concern from everybody around. Now, in retrospect, it's hilarious, right? I used to go for client meetings and say, sorry, I can't have this because I'm fasting. And they would be like, but you look normal to me.
You want something special.
You want something. Like, it's crazy. Like, how are you not dying in front of me? No. So it was really funny back then. And I fell in love with fasting at that point of time because it was the only thing that made a difference to the way that I felt, not just fat loss wise, that of course happened, but energy wise as well. Because, we don't realize just how much we are fueled, right? And if there is a car that is full of fuel, it is technically slower than a car that has lesser fuel in it, right? In Formula 1, we see this all the time, right? Yeah. You're slow in the beginning, fast at the end. Why? Because you're carrying so much. So it's the same way. You're sluggish in the beginning. Obviously, it's not because of the weight, but you're sluggish in the beginning. And after a while, when you start, not being fueled by sugar so much, you're actually full of energy. And that's what I loved. My brain was working better. And all those elements work together. And then slowly, you start learning a little bit more about fasting. Then you go into saying from 16 hours, let's do 18 hours. Let's do 20. Then you do your first 24 hours. And you slowly progress through this, this whole gambit. And then once Ramzan was going on, so I said, best opportunity. I will eat only after sunset. So then I did that whole 1 meal a day kind of thing. So it wasn't breakfast that I did. I just did 1 meal at night. And I felt my body feel so good just doing that. So that is generally how the fasting journey of mine has started. And then obviously did 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and then 5 days. And we'll deep dive into each of them because different things happen in each of them.
So my journey is pretty similar. I think I've been doing IF for about 7-8 years now. And exactly the same thing. People would be like, is there something wrong? Are you doing this for a religious thing? And the fat loss thing works. There is no two ways about it. At least for me, it's worked brilliantly. I would not advise anyone to do IF and in their feeding window eat junk, but I've lost weight eating junk. And as long as you're in your calorie deficit, and IF, it's just worked. But the bigger thing is that it's become a lifestyle.
Yeah,
it's a day-to-day. I'll end up doing IF 4-5 times a week easy without even realizing, because that's how I'm programmed now. And now the thought of, eating 5 small meals a day, that's an alien concept. I can't imagine why would you spend so much time, effort, eating, and I feel sluggish if I eat during the day. I have a big lunch, I want to go sleep. There is no ways I'm alert or working. So that focus bit definitely 100% is the reason I'm also so much into IF. And I've had my biggest gym lifts in the gym. I've had my fastest runs, everything fasted.
Yeah.
And this whole misconception that we have to just keep eating every few hours and get fueled and stuff. Like you said, you're faster when you have less stuff in your system.
In fact, it's so interesting that we have this whole pre-workout that we need to have, right? Your pre-workout is designed to make your energy systems work more efficiently, right? So, for example, you have your black coffee so that it doesn't tire you out. So, black coffee has this thing called adenosine as an inhibitor, right? So, it prevents you from getting tired. Now, not to have black coffee with sugar, because then you're spiking.
Correct.
Right? Not to have that banana before going into
Yeah.
the gym, not to have a bowl of porridge, etc. Because that is, then you're taking away from your energy for the lift and it's going into your digestion.
Correct. You're just digesting. And we were discussing this earlier, at least when I started working out weight training. So I used to be very, very thin. I was a little under 50 kgs.
Okay.
So I had to...
Wow.
Yeah, I was really, really thin. Dangerously unhealthy thin. So I had to weight train and hard gainer, so it was tough to gain muscle. But you came with this knowledge from every trainer that eat 3 hours before, and then half an hour before have another banana shake with some protein and some peanut butter and stuff. And so much focus just went in that. And it's not like we were doing 2 hour, 3 hour workouts, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger level or something. You're doing a 45-minute workout. Why are we fueling up so much? But yeah, thankfully all of that has changed now. And coffee is my pre-workout of choice.
It's the
that
best.
just works.
Yeah. Like when I work out with my bodybuilder friends, they do this pre-workout thing. Like you said, 2 hours they're in the gym, you would die.
Yeah.
Right? At that intensity.
And that volume, right?
They're crazy.
Yeah.
We are not.
Yeah, we're not.
That's why you don't need to do that.
So coming to intermittent fasting protocols, and like how you said, right, different protocols, different duration does different things to you. Let's get into that.
So the first thing on why we fast, I think it's important to get into why we do intermittent fasting per se. So it's very interesting that the whole game around intermittent fasting is around this one hormone called insulin. Okay, everything's about insulin, because what's fascinating is that the body has 4 different hormones to raise blood sugar, but only one to bring it down. Okay, so we got glucagon, we've got adrenal, we've got cortisol, we've got HGH, all raise our glucose, but insulin is the only one that brings it down. So our body is designed to be raising our blood sugar. That's what we don't get. Right? So we're constantly eating, which is anyways raising our blood sugar.
Yeah.
Our body does not need that. Our body, in fact, needs to use its own stores of sugar, which is all the food that we've got in the past, all that we've already eaten. And what we do when we're doing intermittent fasting is multiple changes start taking place in the body. The biggest is that it stabilizes our blood sugar level. So, back in the days before apna continuous glucose monitors, whenever I used to do a fast, I used to poke myself like 2-3 times a day with the old glucometer, checking it out. I remember the first time I did a 48-hour fast, I thought I would die 48 hours fast. I was constantly checking it out, what's happening, checking pulse and all of that. Now it's just so easy to do these things. And I can deep dive into CGMs also.
Just pricking yourself 4 times a day to check if everything's okay.
It's a pain in the ass. You do one finger, next finger, next finger, next finger. So anyway, so you start doing that and you start seeing how your blood sugar stabilizes over a period of time. The next aspect of it is that when you are doing a 16-hour fast, you are working on making sure your blood sugar is stable. But the second important thing is that you're making sure that your body is using its reserves. Okay. When you're constantly eating, you're using the food that you've just eaten. You're never using the reserves that you have. And by reserves, I mean what we want to get rid of, which is the fat on our body. Okay. So when you're doing that 16-hour window, that 18-hour window, it is primarily from your insulin and fat response point of view. Okay. So that is your fat loss kind of fasting. When you slowly move to a little bit more than 18 hours is when you start getting into different aspects of fasting and different changes that take place in our body. So one of the main ones that you do long fasting for is something called autophagy. Autophagy is when your body consumes its own cells. So own phagy consumption. And what it is basically it's eating up all the cells that have stopped working. Right? These are called senescent cells that have gone senile. Okay. And what happens is that if the body is being continuously fueled, it says that I don't need to get rid of them, bichare, let them continue living. What is the point? But now when you remove the food, they're like, arey, right? This town ain't big enough for all of us. Okay, so it starts eating up all these old cells and starts consuming them and using them as nutrition. So what you're doing is you're replenishing the body with newer, better quality cells. When you do longer fasts, and guys, my surname is Doctor. I am not a doctor, so please don't take any of this as medical advice.
Correct, please, yeah. Anything on this episode is our personal experiences.
Yeah. So don't hold me against it. Okay. But what's interesting, and do your own research. Always do your own research. So what's interesting is that a large number of studies have been done on fasting and cancer, because it helps getting rid of these cells that are cancerous in nature, your tumors, all of those, and you're seeing a lot of changes taking place in that. So that's what happens when you do a longer fast. Then once you start hitting the 3-day mark is when something interesting happens in the brain. Our brain starts producing something known as BDNF, brain-derived neutropic factor. So all throughout our school, all throughout college, we were taught this one thing. Our brain is the only organ that does not grow. It does not change. It is the same. Now we know that it does grow. It does change. And when BDNF comes in, it is actually what promotes growth in our body. And BDNF comes from fasting. BDNF comes from lifting in the gym as well. So you get those two benefits that take place. And BDNF, why? Because when we are in a state of fasting and hunger, our body is trying to make us smart enough to go find food. So it is a defense mechanism that is taking place that is beneficial for us. So BDNF grows, which is a fantastic thing.
Even growth hormone, right? Your growth hormone
HGH starts, correct. HGH starts at around the 48-hour mark. It goes 400 times what it normally should be. So HGH is a human growth hormone, which is what everybody who goes to the gym is after, because it helps you grow your muscle, etc. And the reason why HGH comes out is fascinating, Anish, because your body doesn't want to consume the muscle that it already has. Correct? So it's releasing HGH so that it maintains its muscle mass. One of the big worries that people have when they get down this whole fasting route is that, will I lose my muscle?
Oh, people behave like you suddenly overnight are going to lose so much muscle.
You're going to shrink.
Yeah.
Right? And you will technically shrink. Like, for example, when I did my 5-day fast, I shrunk, but it wasn't muscle that disappeared. It was glycogen in the muscle, or the sugar in the muscle that disappeared. So, yes, you do look smaller, but once you start eating again, you puff up.
I want to touch upon the muscle loss misconception, I think, because I do a lot of weight training. So you are weight training to build strength and somewhere build muscle. And you can do that if you do IF all the time. There's absolutely no problem. I think what people also need to understand is that because you're doing IF doesn't mean you're not getting your nutrition. You still have to get your nutrition. Whether you do 16 or you do 1 meal a day or whichever protocol you follow, when it comes to refueling, nutrition is extremely important and you cannot ignore that. So now that I've spoken about a misconception, why don't you tell me one?
So one of my favorite ones is, how will I go to sleep? Won't I go to sleep hungry? Like when you stop eating at 6 o'clock, say, people say, won't I go to sleep hungry? And again, we don't realize that hunger is not a function of your sleep is not a function of your hunger. It is a mindset. And we think that just because my stomach is doing good, it means I'm not going to get sleep. So there's no such thing. If I eat at 5, I still sleep like a baby at 10. So I'm perfectly fine.
For me, one question I get asked a lot is that there is no ways I cannot eat in the morning. I have to have breakfast, otherwise I will not have any energy. And I was like, have you ever tried it? And I'm not saying try it for one day, but try it for a few days and see how it affects, right?
So breakfast myth that we're busting. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Man,
eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and dinner like a pauper, and all of that. Nonsense. It was a marketing gimmick from your oat companies.
Propaganda from the 80s or something.
Yeah, this was before cornflakes. So oat companies had started these breakfast like a king. People did not have breakfast. Breakfast was not a thing. There is no word for breakfast in any traditional society. What is the word for breakfast in Hindi? Nashta. Nashta means snack.
Yeah.
Right. So there's no word for breakfast. So as a result, breakfast didn't exist.
Yeah. When you meet people and they're like, yeah, I like to have a breakfast and then I have to have my lunch at 1 o'clock. I think you just ate. You had your breakfast at 9, now you're having another meal at 12. The other one misconception is, again, this is to not do with weight training but with running, that I have to eat before my runs. And if you're doing a 5K, which I assume a lot of people that I talk to, they're doing a 5K, you can absolutely do a 5K on a fasted state. There's absolutely no problem. And again, personal experience, I'll do a faster 5K fasted than having to eat 3 hours before.
Correct. Because when you're doing when you're doing a 5K, you're relying on cardiovascular energy.
Yeah.
Right? So it is more oxygen energy than glucose energy. When you're doing a slow walk, which is basically a stroll, you're relying more on your glycogen reserves. So it's actually interesting in that way. Like, for example, if you want to do fat loss, don't do a 5K run. If you want fat loss as a goal, do a 5K very slow walk, as if you're walking with a 3-year-old, right, in a fasted state, and you will just see how your body responds.
This is a little digressing from intermittent fasting, but I think walking is something that I neglected so much in my life. I was like, I'll sprint and I'll do my 5K or I'll do a much faster 3K.
Go hard, go home. No, that mentality.
But man, slow and steady cardio, at least for me, just works so well.
Yeah, it works
from a fat loss point of view.
In fact, fasting plus walking is brilliant. Like we were talking about fasting plus training.
Yeah.
So fasting plus walking, amazing. Fasting plus weight training, amazing.
Yeah.
Because both are glucose pathways, they're not cardiovascular.
Let's get into your experience with the 5-day fast. Let's talk about the different fasting protocols or windows leading up to your 5-day fast.
Okay, lovely. So there are two aspects when it comes to what are the kinds of fast that we can do. So the first kind of fast is when people say nothing but water. Okay, so that means no black coffee, nothing else. However, because we know that we are fasting only from an insulin point of view, so anything that does not raise insulin technically can be had in a fast. So as a result, then we get into black coffee is allowed, green tea is allowed during your fasting window. After that, you can do what is called a bone broth fast, which is a higher fat percentage. It does have a little amino acid and protein in it, so it does affect insulin, but not dramatically. So then you have bone broth fasts. And these are typically the things that you can consume. You can consume apple cider vinegar as well in your fasting window, because normally when people say nothing you're going to eat, but what can I eat during a fast? It's like, the idea of a fast is that you don't eat anything. So anyway, so people sometimes want to know what they can consume. So this is stuff that you can consume and you choose what you're going to be doing. Then comes the different timing protocols. Now, the important thing is that fasting is called time restricted eating, not calorie restricted eating. Okay, so when you're eating, you eat as much as you want from a maintenance calories or whatever calorie point of view. However, the starting point for any fasting, I would say, is 12 hours. Many people can't even do 12 hours because they're so used to eating at 12 in the night and 7 in the morning when they wake up. So they don't even get 12 hours of fasting. So I first tell people as a habit, guys, reduce the time then you eat at night. Try and at least get those 12 hours in. If 12 hours is easy, start off with 14 hours. If 14 hours is easy, do 16 hours. Because 16 hours is where that magic starts taking place. 16 hours is where your body starts switching to fat usage, all of that. Then once 16 hours is easy, move to 18. And for most of us, between 16 and 18 is the perfect window that we need to hang around in. Sometimes you do 16, sometimes you want to skip and you want to have a later lunch, you do 18, you want to have an earlier dinner, you do 18, perfectly fine. Once in a while, either once a week or once in 2 weeks, what I suggest is do a 24-hour fast. Now, what does a 24-hour fast do? It pushes you into that ketogenic window. The ketogenic, we haven't spoken about ketosis on the podcast yet, but the whole idea is how do you teach your body to stop consuming the sugar in your system and start consuming the fat that is stored. Okay, and this transition takes place once all the sugar has been, not all, but most of the sugar has been used up, and then your mitochondria starts consuming the ATP that's being generated from a state of ketosis. Now, what's interesting is that the mitochondria or your body has to be trained to get into the state of ketosis because it's forgotten. We've not fed it. We've constantly fed it and has so much sugar that it's, it's like, "Arey, ye bhi kar sakte hain. I can do this also. Wow." Okay, so we have to teach the body that it can. And this 18-hour to the 24-hour window is perfect for doing that. So once a week, once in 2 weeks, 24 hours, I think is a great idea. Then comes 48, the dreaded 48. Because what happens between the 24 and the 48 window is that your body starts producing this hormone called ghrelin. Now, ghrelin is your hunger hormone. Okay, it sounds like that. Only ghrelin, I'm hungry. Right? So, ghrelin is that hunger hormone that makes you search out for food. Right? And it's saying in 48 hours, Baba, you better bring the sky down, go out and get food. So, when you're doing a long fast, this 48-hour mark is the deadly one where you suddenly start feeling hungry, you don't know where you are, and all of that starts happening. But something amazing happens after 48. Your body suddenly becomes peaceful. Ghrelin has stopped. It has left your system. Hunger has left your system. Now you're in a state of complete peace. You don't need food. Somebody's sitting on the table and eating with you. You don't
Doesn't
even
matter.
care. Doesn't matter. Nothing. And then that state of being at peace lasts for up till your 5-day mark, right? Why up to your 5-day mark? Because then you're starting to wonder, now what will I eat and break my fast with? And then you just basically, shoot yourself in the foot. But the idea is that the 3 to 4-day mark is very, very peaceful because there's nothing pulling you. Your energy levels are stable and it's a great place to be. I typically like doing a 3-day to a 4-day fast. Once in a while I do a 5-day fast, but otherwise not. The first time I did a 5-day fast was at my farm, when I thought that if I'm at my farm, I had less temptations to. But what I didn't realize was my cousin was there with his Guju wife. And all we spoke about was what thepla we're going to have after this, what patreha we're going to have after this. And it was complete disaster. It was too funny. But yeah, so that was the way that I did my first, I think that was actually a 3-day fast. I did my first 3-day fast that way. And I've been doing one long fast every 3 or 4 months.
So this 5-day fast, physically and mentally, 2 aspects, right? How were you mentally in terms of focus and work and stuff? And how was your energy level physically? Because I think I did see you on the treadmill or something like that. So both aspects, how were those beyond the 48-hour mark?
So the going to the gym is a regular thing. So I would continue going to the gym through my fasting window. At the 48-hour mark, you are low on energy. Okay. At the 48-hour mark, you are brain foggy, can't focus, but that quickly changes and that quickly shifts. What's interesting is that when you're doing a long fast, your body is consuming fat. Fat is where toxins are stored. Okay. So it's interesting that when you go on a high fat loss diet and you lose a lot of fat fast, you start falling sick fast. Because all those toxins are coming out in your body. And there are lots of different protocols on maybe using chlorella, etc. to absorb these things. And we won't get into that aspect. It's a wormhole in its own. But the idea is that you will feel strange feelings. It could also be because it's these toxins coming out from your fat. But overall, you're actually peaceful. Like people keep asking me, how was it 5 days? I was like, peaceful. You're not running around, where's my next meal coming from?
Yeah.
Okay. Although, like maybe you saw it on my Instagram stories, YouTube was being a complete pain because YouTube was only showing me food stories. And then because after you watch 3 of them, it's obviously going to be like an endless flow. I think we saw some 65 videos of food on that one day.
So I've done a bunch of, my day usually was once a month, do a 48-hour fast. And for me personally, the 30 to 36 hour range, that's when I feel hungry. And the moment you cross that, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I think the last long fast I did was about 54 hours. And I had to break it because I had to go for a wine tasting.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, now I have to...
you broke it at the wine tasting?
No, I didn't. I was like, I have to break this properly to do that in the evening. But I could have easily gone on.
Yeah.
And you just don't feel hungry.
Yeah.
And there was no issue with energy levels or anything.
There's this one moment that comes. So like say you set it at 120 hours or 100 hours, right? At around 95, you will say that, actually I could do one more day.
Yeah, exactly.
Should I just do one more day? Should I just do... It's quite funny.
But 16.8 and 18.6, I think those for me are very easy to do on a regular basis. And because I work a lot in the F&B space and a lot of things are mostly towards the end of the day or evening, events, tastings, all of those kind of things. For me, it's very easy to stop eating at 12 at night and then eat the next day at 6. 2 black coffees in the day at office or whatever, and I'm good. There's no scope of feeling hungry or anything.
Fantastic. So your first meal would be evening 6?
Yeah, evening 6. Ideally work out before, work out at 5, break it with a protein shake and some more things and done.
Perfect. Interesting. Sleep-wise, you're fine after...
Sleep-wise, I'm great.
After 12 o'clock?
I need my 7-8 hours sleep no matter what. So sleep-wise, it's all good. And again, you have to... Those kind of things don't go away, right? Your quality of nutrition, your quality of sleep, all those things have to happen.
Correct.
If you go on this mad IF thing just to lose weight and from a fat loss point of view and you don't do any of those other things, it somewhere will
No, but like
come
me,
crashing.
I done the same thing that you did. I was like, now that I'm fasting, I can have cupcakes, right? And I would do brownies, cupcakes every single day. But then you realize that if you're spending so much energy and time on your health,
Correct.
then you realize that it's not about the calories that you're having in that cupcake. That is
Yeah.
the least of my concerns. It's the inflammation that you feel afterwards, right? It is all the other junk that body, that food's doing to you that you want out of your system. You want to be nice and clean. You want to be efficient.
The CGM angle is super interesting because one thing that brought about something I learned was that if I'm fasting, at least my protocol mostly is 18 hours. Even if I eat junk after that, something is just those So House cookies are so good with the coffee, just like 4 of those, or something even with more sugar, my sugars are absolutely stable
Yeah.
for a decent amount of time, unless I really go berserk and eat too much sugar. And this is something, again, always learned, always heard about, but seeing it on the CGM was just proof that further that fasting does make a decent difference.
And he's so lucky that, we have good quality CGMs now.
Yeah.
Like 5 years ago, when I was using the other one, I had to manually track what I've eaten, write it down in a book, compare notes, measure it every single day. It was a pain. And the quality of the
But one thing I
data
also
you're getting
learned
so good.
was black coffee once did spike my sugar. And how you said 4 things can spike,
Cortisol.
right? So, yeah, too much coffee. I was pretty jittery and nervous. That led to anxiety and just stress, and cortisol went up and blood sugar went up.
You'll notice a spike every morning as well, right? Even though you're in a fasted state.
Yeah.
And that again is cortisol, because that is the cortisol that is used to wake you up in the morning. So it'll be interesting for you to see when it happens in your morning. Is it when you wake up? Is it still when you're fast asleep? Because all of us will have a little spike and then it grows up.
Yeah, but I never imagined that black coffee could do that. But yeah, one thing led to another, and that happened.
You should check out what happens to blood sugar on a stressful day. Like
I have. And I've actually seen that, like a really stressful call, and that call was like a half an hour call. And 15 minutes in, I can see a difference.
You can see a spike, right?
Yeah.
Your body is so intelligent. It is getting used to you either fighting or flying or fleeing. Right? So as a result, it is telling you, okay, Baba, get ready, get ready, get ready.
And these are things you hear that, stress does this, stress does that. And when you see it on an app actually happen live, you're like, okay, you know what? I need to calm down a little bit.
Yeah. It's very, very fascinating.
It's a small thing, but I've given up on WhatsApp for work. These are just small stresses I don't want anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah, like
so
no work stuff on WhatsApp.
Email.
My WhatsApp status is please email. Like not replying to WhatsApp for work. Anyways, coming back to intermittent fasting. What does IF also do for your gut biome? Something we really don't end up talking much about.
So it's interesting that one of the main benefits for fasting is to give your gut a break. So what we don't realize is that every time we eat food, we are technically putting a foreign object into our body, right? We normally think of food as, it's nourishing. No, guys, it's a foreign object that is entering your body. And your body wants to get rid of that foreign object as fast as possible. It's like, when a sliver of wood gets stuck in your finger and you want to get it out. It's the same way that your body is processing that food. It wants to get it out as fast as possible. And if you're constantly eating, it means that you're constantly stressing the body in that way. When you're giving your body that break of 16 hours, 18 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, is that your body is now having time to repair the lining of the gut, etc. Shorter fasts, 16 hours, 18 hours, etc., don't have a effect on the gut microbiome per se. It helps because there's no sugar, so the bad bacteria that are sugar eaters reduces. However, when you do a long 5-day fast, I believe that there is a shift that takes place in your microbiome because there's a large part of the gut bacteria that die off. And this time around, I did a gut microbiome test at the end of it. So the result will come probably in a couple of weeks. So we'll do a follow-up and I'll tell you about what has happened, and we'll probably put it up on our Instagram and we can share it. But it's interesting because they've never had somebody do a 5-day fast and check. So we are all now very excited to see what happens to our microbiome after a 5-day fast.
Yeah, from whatever I've read, you do it, a lot of it dies and then comes back stronger or in a better way. Again, yeah, something
And it depends on what you refeed with.
Yeah.
What we don't realize is that the refeeding window is as important as the fasting window. So if you are, like the first time I did the 3-day fast, because I was only thinking theplas and ghatyas and fafras, that's what I ate after I finished my fast. Big mistake.
Yeah.
But this time around, it was a more, sensible approach to what I was eating and getting back into place.
This also plays into the whole detox conversation. When I hear people say I'm doing a detox and I'm having this tea, I was like, okay, that to me is more notional detox than actually doing IF and when autophagy and stuff like that kicks in. Any thoughts on that? Like, what is detox? That versus actually IF helping out in detox.
Detox teas, detox this, detox that, complete rubbish, because your body is designed only for detoxing. Right? There are so many ways to detox. Sweat is a detox. So, for example, going to a sauna is a far better thing of detoxing than having a tea. Right? Fasting, of course, because you're not putting more toxins in, is helping your body detox. So, it's not putting in junk. As a result, it's easier to get rid of the junk that's there already. And apart from that, there are so many other more important molecules than, like, for example, getting the right kind of antioxidants is far more important. The right kind of polyphenols far more important than detox teas.
We have a lot more to discuss about IF, and we'll do that after these short messages.
Hello, everybody. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast. Before we get into the rest of the promo, I just want to make a quick announcement. Our channel, IVM Likes, is now IVM Pop. We are going to be releasing a number of shows in this channel. Stay tuned for more. On What the Hell Navya, Navya is joined by her mom, Shweta Nanda, and her grandmother, Jaya Bachchan, as they discuss female friendships. They talk about how their girl best friends empower them and make each day better. On This Round is on Me, Gauri is joined by Anand Goenka, Executive Director of the Indian Express Group. He talks about their massive shift from traditional print to digital media. On Pop Rap, formerly known as IVM Likes, Nehil, Antariksha and Pragati take us down memory lane by recollecting memories of some of their favorite live-action shows from their childhood. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Abbas and Sparsh talk about live streaming of the Supreme Court hearings, wrestler John Cena's world record, and the increased demands for electronic cars. And on Investverse, Anupam is joined by veteran adman Ambi Parmeshwaran. They talk about how to develop a relationship with money and chalk out a plan for your future. Once again, everybody, I'd like to remind you all to go check out our merch store on ivmpodcast.com. We have new stuff coming out all the time. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcasts on all platforms. And do remember, spread the word about the shows you're listening to. We would also appreciate it if you could rate or review this show or any of the other shows that you're listening to, wherever you're listening to. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Volvo XC40 Recharge, Bumble, Heads Up for Tails, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you so much for making this possible.
All right, we're back to discuss intermittent fasting. One thing I also got wondering was that pretty much every religion has some sort of intermittent fasting.
I always joke about this because every religion has some form of fasting, except mine, which is like Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism has no concept of fasting except 1 month we will go vegetarian. That is our concept of fasting. But anyway, I'm sure at some point of time we also had it and it's gone. We normally think of fasting from a religious point of view as penance, or from a point of view of, we are sacrificing something. But what we don't realize is that all these religions also added this as a health oriented reason for doing this, right? It is your body's way of saying, you've gone through indulgences, now let's repair.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way of thinking about all our fasting, and even when we do a religious fast. The funny thing was, when I was doing my 5-day fast, was when the Jains were doing the Pajushan. Right? And everybody was saying, my aunt is doing 9 days. You're doing 5 days. I was like, guys, it's not a competition. But what I appreciate about Pajushan and all was, they're saying that, yeah, but we do everything. We still, go to work, we do this and all of that. And that is how we should be thinking about fasting.
Yeah.
It's not that when I'm doing a long fast, I'm lying in bed, people are coming and pampering me. Dude, I'm at work, or I'm at the gym, or I'm recording podcasts.
Yeah.
Right? I was recording podcasts on my 5th day.
Yeah, life goes on.
Yeah, life goes on, and it is perfectly normal in that context. It is just that you're not continuously eating. And since I'm a habit coach, obviously I know that eating and hunger is a habit. Right? It is not that we actually feel hungry.
Yeah.
It is just that it's a habit of hunger.
I've also seen, again, this is something personal, but in my mother's case, she was diabetic. Her blood sugars have, like, everything's just become so much better with about 2 years of IF regularly. Big difference.
Yeah.
And this is another question you get, that if you are pre-diabetic or diabetic, can you do intermittent fasting?
In fact, when you're pre-diabetic, you should be doing intermittent fasting so that you don't become diabetic. And pre-diabetic is a polite way of saying diabetic.
Yeah.
Right?
You're pretty much there.
Dude, you're there. It's just that we're trying to be polite when saying pre-diabetic. You must take it seriously. All right? Even when people say insulin sensitivity, all of those things are things that you should be taking seriously. Fasting helps with that. In fact, on the Habit Coach podcast, we did 2 episodes with Dr. Roshni Sanghani, and she treats her diabetic patients with fasting. She's associated with Dr. Jason Fung, who's the granddaddy of intermittent fasting and has been teaching it for all these years. And we refer to his books, etc., when we're talking about fasting, obesity code, diabetic code, etc. Fantastic books. If you're diabetic, please read Diabetic Code. It'll put everything in perspective. So pre-diabetic, diabetes, my dad as well. Intermittent fasting has really helped him. Intermittent fasting plus a walk.
Yeah, same, pretty much. How does IF affect sexual drive?
Normal IF, no difference.
Correct.
5-day fasting, I felt there was a drop at day 4. But then day 6, it comes back with a vengeance.
Amazing. Just like the gut bacteria.
Just like a gut bacteria. So there you go. So plan your long fast accordingly.
How do you break your long fast?
So what I did was I broke it with bone broth. So the collagen from the bone broth helps line your gut. It has your amino acids. It has fat. So it has all the elements that are needed for you to awaken your gut. Then what I did was, because I'm Parsi, of course, I had eggs, because what else would you eat? So I had scrambled eggs made with ghee, and then I had bhindi, which, although lots of people say you should not be having bhindi, I find bhindi very easy to digest. The sticky substance in bhindi helps the gut lining. So from that point of view, I had bhindi. And then, because I was watching so many street food videos on YouTube, I made my friend order a sada dosa and some pav bhaji, and then I took 2 bites from there to satisfy the YouTube craving.
YouTube craving. What about impact on inflammation? Another thing we don't end up talking about, and again it goes into more of the fat loss conversation, but inflammation is an important aspect as well.
Yeah. In fact, inflammation, when we think about fasting, because we're not causing damage to the body is having its time to repair. Inflammation basically is the way that your body repairs its damage. You get hit on the head, you get a bump. That is nothing but inflammation. Now imagine that bump happening at a cellular level in your body. All your cells are feeling this bump, right? All your organs are feeling. That is basically what we call systemic inflammation. Systemic inflammation happens because of toxins in our food or too much sugar that we would have. When you're not eating sugar, inflammation comes down. When you're not eating junk, inflammation comes down. So IF helps dramatically in this. In fact, like, I really truly believe almost all of us should be doing our IF.
Correct.
Some people are concerned about saying, should ladies be doing IF? Should ladies not be doing IF? 1, listen to your body. 2, listen to a doctor. If a doctor says never, listen to a second doctor, just making sure that the first doctor is not anti-fasting, and then take a call on it. But the idea is that at least 12 hours do. 12 hours is perfectly fine.
I still can't get over this 12-hour story. What you've told me, how 12 hours is nothing. 12 hours would anyways happen.
But think about it. Now, you eat at 12 o'clock when you go out. When people wake up in the morning, what is the first thing they do? Hit the kitchen. Okay, they go to the toilet.
Yeah.
And then after that, they go to the kitchen. Because I read in a book, you have to have 4 almonds in the morning. Correct. Then you have to have your glass of fruit juice in the morning.
Correct.
Then you have to have those soaked things. And it continues and it starts. So obviously, where do 12 hours happen?
That morning fruit juice can be an episode on its own.
Morning fruit. But the number of people that are munching till the time they fall asleep? It's crazy.
I'm one of those.
There you go.
I'm a night eater.
Night eater. the last thing that I want to share about fasting is that don't be scared of it. Okay. When I was doing my 5-day fast, mom called it everything except fasting. She said, Ashdin, why are you starving? Right? So don't be scared of fasting. We are so accustomed to food entering our system that by the time we finish our first meal, we're thinking about what you're going to eat next. Our entire day is divided into before lunch, after lunch, before breakfast, after breakfast, before dinner, after dinner. We use our meals as our timekeeping units. And ultimately, that is nothing but the habit that we create in our life. If we realize this, we have an opportunity to take back control. Like somebody was asking this to me the other day when I was doing my 5-day fast. I was doing a Q&A on Instagram, and I said that I'm doing this so that I'm not dependent on food, right? We have to remove the dependence on food. We have to stop thinking of food as this thing that we must eat or this complete pleasure thing, right? People say that, Ashdin, you're depriving yourself of pleasure. No, I'm taking care of my body, and that is a higher order priority for me, right? So don't be scared of fasting. Don't think that it is something that you're doing as a punishment to yourself. Do it as something as a celebration for yourself. And I think that would be the best way for all of us to start experiencing it.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said, right? People are somewhere scared of fasting, or it's this taboo that you're doing a crash thing for some immediate fat loss. When I did my 54 hours fast, I was posting on Instagram as well. And so many people were like, dude, why are you doing this? This is so inconsistent and stuff. I was like, no, it's not. I do this quite a bit. And I will eat for pleasure also. There is a time for that, and there is a time for this.
Correct. Yes, other dosa, pav bhaji. We do have it.
But I want to end by saying that whoever's listening to this, if you do subscribe to that thing that you have to eat 4-5 times a day, or you have to wake up and eat or whatever, just try changing things around, not once, but for a few days, and see how the impact is.
Yeah.
Because for me, I cannot imagine eating 4-5 times a day. That just from a focus point of view, I can't think.
Because imagine carrying all those dabbas around with you. Right?
That's
You're
the
just
other
like, you're going to be focusing on the dabbas and not on your work or whatever it is that you have.
But thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Any questions, whoever's listening to this, both of us are fairly active on Instagram. Could I have your handle?
Ashdin Doc, ASHDINDOC on Instagram.
And I'm Anish B. So please reach out to us for anything, and hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.
Yay.